Millionaire helps a homeless man, but she never imagined what he would do in her warehouse. Imagine living surrounded by everything money can buy, yet feeling that something essential is missing. Now imagine losing everything and still managing to smile. Evelyn, a young wealthy woman, meets Harold, a simple man who turns what's discarded into something valuable. The connection between these two is something no one could have foreseen. As they grow closer, a powerful discovery takes place, but the real transformation goes far beyond what you could imagine. Do you want to know how their lives change in unexpected ways? Get ready for a story of friendship, hope, and new beginnings. The wind blew strongly against the windows of the imposing mansion in Savannah, Georgia. Evelyn, a young heiress to a vast fortune, was sitting in a leather armchair in the living room, surrounded by luxury. Everything around her reflected wealth and power, but to her, it was nothing more than an empty shell. The gleaming marble beneath her feet, the velvet curtains, and the artwork spread across the walls brought no comfort to the void she felt. Since she was little, Evelyn was used to having everything money could buy, but she never had what she most desired, the presence of her parents. They were always busy with business trips. The mansion, with its endless hallways and perfectly decorated rooms, was a constant reminder that despite her wealth, Evelyn was alone. The staff, as kind as they tried to be, couldn't fill the emptiness left by her parents' absence. The house, though grand, felt cold and impersonal. Evelyn spent days wandering through the rooms, not knowing what to do with all the space and silence. Savannah, a city full of charm and history, was a place many people would love to explore. However, Evelyn rarely left her mansion. Her social life revolved around events organized by her parents, parties full of people who seemed more interested in her money than in her. She never felt connected to anyone. To others, she was nothing more than the heiress, a young millionaire who had it all. But deep down, Evelyn felt empty. The house, despite being a symbol of success, felt like it was suffocating her. The walls, full of expensive paintings, seemed to close in on her, trapping her in an isolated world. With each step, the echo of her shoes on the marble grew louder, as if her loneliness was increasing. Even surrounded by luxurious objects, Evelyn never felt she belonged there. To her, the mansion was a golden prison, separating her from the real world. One morning, after a sleepless night, Evelyn decided she needed to get out, breathe some fresh air. She put on light clothes for a run, something she rarely did, and went out to the garden. The staff kept the property immaculate, but even the beauty of the well-maintained gardens couldn't lift her spirits. She started running, feeling the wind on her face, but the weight on her chest didn't lessen. It was as if running wasn't enough to clear her thoughts. As she ran, Evelyn heard something that made her stop. It was singing. A soft melody came from outside the mansion gates. Intrigued, she slowed down and approached to see who was singing. Outside the gates, an older man, dressed in simple, worn clothes, was rummaging through the trash. He was singing carefree, not realizing he was being watched. Evelyn stood still for a moment, observing the man. He seemed peaceful despite his situation. To her, it was a complete mystery. How could someone living like that sing with such ease? The scene intrigued her, and without thinking, she called out. "Hey you," she said, a little unsure. The man stopped what he was doing and looked at her. His smile was sincere and joyful, something Evelyn rarely saw in the people she interacted with. "Hi, miss, can I help you?" he asked, as if there was nothing strange about the situation. Evelyn was taken aback. No one usually asked her what she needed. Everyone assumed she already had everything. What could she say? After a brief silence, she asked, "What are you doing?" "Looking for something that might still be useful. Sometimes what people throw away still has value," the man replied naturally. Evelyn had never thought of trash as something that could have value. To her, Anything old or worn out was simply replaced with something new. However, there was something about the way this man spoke that made her reflect. His simplicity contrasted with the world she lived in. He seemed to have found a peace that Evelyn had never known. "What's your name?" she asked, still intrigued. "Harold," he replied, smiling. Evelyn felt curious. Something she hadn't felt in a long time. Something about Harold touched her. Maybe it was the way he dealt with life, or maybe it was the fact that, for the first time, someone was talking to her without any ulterior motives. It was a simple conversation, but one that awakened in her a new perspective on what really had value. In the days that followed, Evelyn couldn't stop thinking about that encounter. Harold, a man living in such different conditions from her, seemed to carry a wisdom she didn't possess. He who had so little seemed more at peace than she who had everything. Evelyn's life was beginning to seem even emptier than before. Thoughts about Harold continued to occupy Evelyn's mind. Something about him sparked a curiosity she couldn't explain. She found herself remembering the sincere smile he gave her, something rare in her world. Harold seemed genuinely content with the little he had, while Evelyn, surrounded by luxury, couldn't find satisfaction in anything. The difference between their realities intrigued her more every day. That week, Evelyn decided to go for another run, hoping to see Harold again. As she neared the gates, there he was, as if fate had brought them together once more. Harold was, as always, rummaging through the trash, searching for something useful. But this time he seemed more focused, his eyes fixed on what he was doing. "Hi, Harold," Evelyn called, with a smile she didn't expect to give. Harold looked up and smiled back, as if he had been expecting her. "Hello, Evelyn. Good to see you again," he replied with the same calm as before. Evelyn approached the gates, feeling an ever-growing connection with Harold. Unlike the people she usually met, he didn't see her as the heiress of a great fortune. To Harold, she was just an ordinary person, and that made her feel more comfortable than she had ever felt. "What are you looking for today?" she asked, curious to know more about what he did. "I'm seeing if I can find something to restore. Sometimes what people throw away can still be used. It just needs a little work," Harold replied, lifting a piece of what he had found. Evelyn became thoughtful, restoring something discarded. The idea seemed distant from her reality. Everything in her life had always been new, perfect, bought to replace whatever no longer served. The concept of recovering something thrown away was strange to her. Yet the simplicity with which Harold spoke about it intrigued her. "What do you do with these things afterward?" she asked, eager to understand more. "I used to restore furniture. I transform old pieces into something new. It's something I did with my wife," Harold said, his voice tinged with a hint of sadness. "But after she passed, things changed, and I lost everything." Evelyn felt a pang in her chest hearing that. She had never lost someone so important, but she was familiar with loneliness. The difference was that, while Harold had lost his wife, she felt she had lost her parents to work and the business world. They were always absent, and that made her feel abandoned, even though she was surrounded by everything money could buy. "I'm sorry about your wife," Evelyn said, genuinely touched by Harold's story. "Life goes on," he replied with a serene smile. "We do the best with what we have." The simplicity with which Harold spoke of his loss and the difficulties he faced made Evelyn reflect on her own life. She, who had never had to face great adversities, was beginning to realize that perhaps her wealth wasn't the gift everyone thought it was. There was something in Harold she wanted to understand better, something that made her believe he had a wisdom she had never experienced. In the following days, Evelyn began thinking of ways to help Harold. He seemed content with his simple life, but she wanted to do more for him. Then she remembered an old storage room at the back of the mansion, full of forgotten and unused furniture. "Harold, you like restoring furniture, right?" she asked during one of her visits to the gates. "Yes, I do. Always have. But it's been a long time since I've done it," he replied, with a slight sparkle in his eyes. We have a storage room here, full of old furniture. No one uses it. Maybe you'd like to take a look and see if you can do something with them, Evelyn suggested, feeling a satisfaction she hadn't felt in a long time. Harold was surprised by the offer, but his sincere smile showed that he was grateful for the opportunity. I'd love to, he replied enthusiastically. In the days that followed, Harold began visiting the mansion's storage room, and Evelyn accompanied him whenever she could. With each piece of furniture he began restoring, Evelyn saw more than just old pieces being repaired. She saw a transformation, not only of objects but of herself as well. Harold's work was starting to touch something deep inside her, something she didn't know existed. Harold, with his skilled hands, breathed new life into furniture that seemed beyond hope. And in doing so, he unknowingly began to restore something inside Evelyn, too. The young heiress, who had always felt lost and purposeless, was beginning to see the world in a different way, through Harold's eyes. As days passed, the friendship between Evelyn and Harold deepened. Harold now spent most of his time in the mansion's storage room, restoring old furniture that had been left behind. For him, it was like going back in time to when he and his wife worked together. Every piece he restored connected him to his memories, but at the same time helped him move forward. Evelyn, on the other hand, continued to visit him frequently. What started as mere curiosity had transformed into something much greater. Evelyn found herself increasingly fascinated by Harold's work. It wasn't just the process of restoring furniture that enchanted her, but the way Harold viewed the world. He didn't see things as disposable, as something that could easily be replaced. He believed that everything and everyone deserved a second chance. While Harold worked, Evelyn took the opportunity to ask questions. She wanted to know more about his life, his wife, and how his work had been before everything fell apart. Harold, with his calm patience, shared stories of a time when things were different. But even as he spoke of the past, he remained at peace with the present. You really love this, don't you? Evelyn asked one sunny morning as she watched Harold sand down an old table. Yes, I do. Restoring furniture is more than just work for me. It's a way of giving new life to something that's been forgotten. It's a way of showing that, even when something seems lost, it can still be recovered, Harold replied, without taking his eyes off the table. Those words resonated deeply within Evelyn. She began to think about her own life. Could she be restored too? Could she, like the furniture Harold restored, find a new life and new meaning? Until then, her existence had seemed empty and without purpose. But now, seeing Harold's work, she began to believe that maybe there was hope for her too. However, as Evelyn and Harold spent more time together, tensions started to rise. The mansion staff began to notice how often Evelyn visited the storage room. Some whispered among themselves, while others looked on with suspicion. It was strange to them, seeing the young heiress, always so reserved and distant, now getting close to someone like Harold, a man who lived on the streets and, in their eyes, had nothing to offer. One day, while Evelyn was in the storage room, one of the mansion's staff approached her, looking a little uncomfortable. Miss Evelyn, are you sure you want to keep spending so much time here? People are starting to talk, he said cautiously. Evelyn looked at the staff member, feeling a mix of frustration and determination. She knew people would gossip, but for the first time in her life, she didn't care. I know what I'm doing, she replied firmly, maintaining her composure. Harold, who was on the other side of the room, noticed the conversation but chose not to interfere. He understood that his presence might be causing discomfort, but he also sensed that something more important was happening between them. When the staff member left, Harold approached Evelyn. People will always talk, Evelyn, no matter what you do, but what really matters is how you feel. If this makes you happy, then that's all that matters, he said in his usual calm manner. Evelyn smiled, grateful for Harold's support. He always knew just what to say to calm her. It was incredible how someone who had faced so many hardships could maintain the inner peace she so desperately sought. One day, while Harold was working on a particularly challenging piece of furniture, Evelyn decided to ask more about his wife. "You talk about her a lot. What was she like?" Evelyn asked, curious to know more about the woman who had meant so much to Harold. Harold paused for a moment, looking at the furniture in front of him. His expression became serious, but not sad. "Anna was everything to me. She had a unique way of seeing the world. She always said that, just like the furniture we restored, people could be restored too. She believed that, with patience and care, everything could have a second chance," Harold said with a distant smile. Evelyn was touched by his words. Anna seemed like an extraordinary woman, someone who viewed the world in a way that few people could. And, in a way, Evelyn felt like she was starting to see things that way too. "It must have been hard when she passed away," Evelyn said, feeling a deep empathy for Harold. "It was. But in some way, she's still with me. Every piece of furniture I restore, every part one fix, reminds me of her. And that gives me strength to keep going," Harold replied with a serene look. Evelyn stayed silent for a moment, absorbing what Harold had said. She was beginning to understand that true wealth wasn't found in material things, but in the connections we make with people and the world around us. Over time, Evelyn realized that her friendship with Harold wasn't just an exchange of experiences. He was teaching her something much bigger: the importance of valuing what truly matters. And as Harold restored the furniture in the storage room, Evelyn felt that, in a way, he was also helping to restore something within her. As time passed, the mansion's storage room became a place of transformation, both for the old furniture and for the lives of Harold and Evelyn. Harold, who had lost nearly everything, now dedicated himself to restoring pieces that, to many, seemed worthless. Every day brought a new challenge, a new piece to repair, and he threw himself into it fully. Evelyn, on the other hand, found new meaning in her own life through her visits to the storage room. One afternoon, while Harold was working on a rocking chair, Evelyn watched in silence. The chair was one of the oldest pieces in the storage room, and it was in terrible condition when Harold found it. The wood was cracked, and the upholstery was torn. For anyone else, the chair would have been discarded without a second thought. But Harold saw something there, something worth restoring. "Do you think you can fully restore this chair?" Evelyn asked, curious. Harold smiled. "It'll be a lot of work, but yes, I can. The chair has a good structure. It just needs some attention and patience." Evelyn watched as Harold began sanding down the worn wood of the chair. Every movement of his hands was careful and precise. He treated the piece as though it were valuable, not as something that had been abandoned. His dedication made Evelyn reflect on how she had been raised to discard anything that wasn't perfect or new. She was beginning to realize that the value of things lay in the stories they carried, not just in their outward appearance. One day, after returning from a walk, Evelyn decided to visit the storage room without telling Harold in advance. When she arrived, she was surprised by what she saw. The rocking chair, which had once been in terrible condition, now looked almost new. The wood was polished, and the upholstery had been carefully restored. It was as if the chair had been reborn. "Harold, this is incredible," Evelyn exclaimed, amazed by the transformation. Harold, who was cleaning his tools, looked at the chair and smiled. "It's ready to be used again, and with a little luck, it'll last many years." Evelyn approached the chair and ran her hand over the smooth wood. She was impressed not only by Harold's skill, but also by what the chair represented. It wasn't just a restored piece of furniture. It was a symbol of the idea that everything and everyone deserves a second chance. "I never thought something so old and worn out could look like this," Evelyn said, still in awe. "It's not about hiding the marks of time, but giving them new meaning. Every scar tells a story, and that's what makes things valuable," Harold replied calmly. Harold's words deeply moved Evelyn. She, who had always sought perfection in everything, was beginning to realize that perhaps true beauty lay in imperfections, in the stories each person and object carried. The idea that the value of something was in its ability to be restored, not in its perfection, began to change the way she viewed the world. With the success of the chair's restoration, Evelyn had an idea. She wanted other people to see Harold's talent. It wasn't fair that he remained hidden in the storage room, working quietly. The world needed to know what he was capable of. "Harold, what do you think about having an exhibition?" Evelyn asked, her eyes gleaming with excitement. Harold looked at her, surprised. "An exhibition? I'm not sure I'm ready for that, Evelyn. I've never thought of anything like that." "But why not? Your work is amazing, Harold. People need to see what you do. I can help organize everything. I'm sure it will be a success." Harold stayed silent for a moment, reflecting on the proposal. He had never imagined himself as someone who would present his work in a gallery. But looking at Evelyn, he saw that she believed in him. And for the first time in a long time, he began to believe in himself too. "If you think we can do this, then let's give it a try," he finally said. Evelyn was thrilled with his response. The idea of an exhibition seemed like the perfect opportunity to show the world Harold's talent, but it was also a chance for her to do something that truly mattered. She knew this exhibition would be more than just an event. It would be a new beginning for both Harold and herself. In the following days, Evelyn dedicated herself to planning the exhibition. She used her contacts in the city to secure a space at a local gallery and began inviting people to the event. Harold's story, the man who had lost everything and now restored furniture with skill, quickly caught the attention of the community. Everyone wanted to see what he had to offer. Meanwhile, Harold continued working in the storage room, preparing his pieces for the exhibition. Each piece he restored seemed to carry with it a story of resilience and transformation. And Evelyn, by his side, felt that, in some way, she was part of something much bigger than she had ever imagined. The exhibition was approaching, and Evelyn could barely contain her excitement. She knew the event would be a turning point, not only for Harold but for herself too. It was the chance to show the world that the most valuable things aren't those that shine, but those that have a story to tell. News of Harold's exhibition spread quickly throughout the city. With Evelyn's influence and connections, she managed to attract the attention of the local press and several people interested in art and design. Harold's story was captivating. A man who had lost everything but found new purpose in restoring old furniture. People wanted to see his work and, more than that, wanted to meet the man behind the pieces. The days leading up to the exhibition were intense. Evelyn and Harold worked tirelessly in the storage room, preparing the last pieces and organizing the event's details. The gallery where the exhibition would take place was an elegant space, and Evelyn made sure everything was perfect. She wanted Harold to receive the recognition he deserved. On the night of the exhibition, the gallery was packed. People from all over the city came to see Harold's work and hear his story. Evelyn was nervous but excited. She knew this was an important moment, both for Harold and for herself. Seeing the number of people who attended, she felt a sense of pride she hadn't known she was capable of. Harold, on the other hand, was visibly emotional. He had never imagined something like this could happen. As he walked through the gallery, seeing his pieces displayed, he felt a mix of gratitude and accomplishment. Every piece he had restored represented not just his talent, but also his journey of overcoming adversity. The rocking chair, in particular, caught the attention of visitors. Many were impressed by the level of detail in the restoration, and several asked about the story behind the piece. Harold, with his characteristic humility, explained how he had found the chair in terrible condition in the mansion's storage room and how he worked to restore it to its former glory. "That chair was just an old, worn-out piece when I found it," Harold said while explaining the restoration process. "But with patience and dedication, I brought it back to life. Just like all of us, it deserved a second chance." Harold's words touched many of the people present. There was something deeply symbolic about his work. It wasn't just about restoring furniture. It was about restoring lives, about believing that, even in the worst circumstances, there's still hope. During the event, several people approached Harold to commission restored furniture. They wanted to have a piece created by him, not just for its aesthetic value, but for the meaning behind his work. Evelyn, seeing the enthusiasm from people, realized that something much bigger was happening. "Harold, what do you think about opening a woodworking shop?" she asked, her eyes shining with excitement. Harold looked at her, surprised by the idea. "A woodworking shop? I don't know, Evelyn. That seems too big for me," he replied, feeling a bit hesitant. "We can do it together. You have the talent, Harold. I have the resources. Let's create something new, something of our own, where you can keep doing what you love without depending on anyone." Harold stayed silent for a moment, thinking about the idea. He had never considered starting his own business, especially something as big as a woodworking shop. But looking at Evelyn, he saw that she believed in him, and that gave him courage. "I don't know if I'm ready for this, but if you think we can do it, let's give it a shot," he finally said. Evelyn was overjoyed with his response. She knew this was the opportunity to give Harold the chance he deserved. In the following days, they started planning the new business. With the money from the commissions made during the exhibition and Evelyn's financial support, they rented a space in town and began setting up the shop. The space was perfect, large enough for Harold to work comfortably, yet cozy enough to welcome customers who would come to order restored furniture. Harold was excited but also nervous. He had never managed a business before, but he knew that with Evelyn by his side, they could make it work. The following days were full of hard work, but also full of satisfaction. Harold spent hours in the shop, working on new projects and restoring furniture for his clients. With each completed piece, he felt he was taking another step toward the future he had always wanted but had never believed possible. Evelyn, for her part, got involved in every aspect of the business. She helped organize the finances, attend to customers, and even chose the tools Harold would use. For her, the woodworking shop was more than just a business. It was a symbol of everything she had learned from Harold about the value of things and people. The shop soon became known in the city. People from all over came to see Harold's work and order his pieces. Financial success was a natural consequence of Harold's talent and Evelyn's support. But for both, the real success lay in the satisfaction of doing something meaningful. Harold and Evelyn, who once lived in such different worlds, were now united by a common purpose. They had found in each other the strength to move forward and build something that truly mattered. Time passed, and Harold and Evelyn's woodworking shop became a success. The space they had rented in the city became a meeting point for customers looking not just for restored furniture, but for pieces with history and meaning. Harold, with his talent and dedication, continued transforming old objects into true works of art, and Evelyn, with her vision and organizational skills, ensured the business flourished. The shop was more than just a workplace. It was a symbol of overcoming adversity, friendship, and transformation. Harold, who had lost everything, now found purpose in his work and his life. He was no longer alone, and with every piece of furniture he restored, he felt like he was recovering a part of himself. Evelyn, on the other hand, had finally found a purpose. For the first time in her life, she felt like she was doing something that really mattered. One afternoon, after a long day of work, Harold and Evelyn sat outside the shop, watching the people on the street. The sun was beginning to set, and there was a sense of tranquility in the air. "I never imagined my life would take this turn," Harold said, looking at Evelyn with a calm smile. "If it weren't for you, I'd still be lost." Evelyn shook her head, smiling back. "You did this for yourself, Harold. I just gave you an opportunity. The talent was always yours." Harold reflected on her words. He knew there was truth in what Evelyn said, but he also knew that without her, none of this would have happened. Evelyn believed in him when no one else did, and that made all the difference. Maybe, but you gave me something I had lost, hope. And that's something I'll never forget, he replied, with gratitude in his voice. Evelyn felt warmth in her chest hearing that. She, who had always felt empty and lost, was now surrounded by something real, something she had helped build. The woodworking shop wasn't just a business. It was the result of a true friendship and a shared desire to make a difference. The days in the shop were full of hard work, but also full of satisfaction. Every restored piece of furniture, every satisfied customer, was a reminder that they were on the right path. Evelyn continued learning from Harold, and he, in turn, felt strengthened by the partnership they had built. The woodworking shop soon became a symbol in the community. It wasn't just a place where people ordered furniture. It was a space of inspiration, where Harold and Evelyn's stories of overcoming adversity touched everyone who came through the doors. People came not only for Harold's work but also for the story behind the shop, for the friendship that had created it all. One night, as they were closing up the shop, Evelyn looked at Harold and said something she had been holding inside for a long time. You know, Harold, I thought I was helping you, but the truth is you've helped me so much more. I had everything, but I felt empty. Now, with this place, with you, I finally feel complete. Harold smiled, knowing those words came from deep within Evelyn's heart. Sometimes all we need is someone to believe in us to discover what we're capable of. Evelyn. And you did that for me. I'll never forget it. Evelyn stayed silent, absorbing Harold's words. She knew their journey was just beginning, and that together, they could face any challenge. The woodworking shop was just the beginning of something much greater. In the months that followed, the shop continued to prosper. Harold and Evelyn worked side by side, creating new stories and giving new lives to old furniture. But more than that, they created a place where people could find hope, just as they had. Harold and Evelyn's friendship grew stronger each day. They had started this journey as strangers, but now they were partners, friends, and above all, a team that believed in the power of transformation. And so, with the shop thriving and their lives transformed, Harold and Evelyn moved forward, knowing they had found in each other what they had always been searching for, a new beginning.